Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm a bit late. I'm having trouble with technology here. So today I have my Facebook and my YouTube going. So I'm going to be watching my Facebook. Okay. So my question I posted was where does feng shui come from? Because I think a lot of people are confused. And sorry, my lighting is a bit off. Because I was confused when I started. I didn't know anything about feng shui. Yeah. Just thought, these are like old Chinese rules that you're supposed to follow that will help you uh, bring prosperity to you and your family. And that's how I started. But the more I learned, the more I found out where it comes from and how it all came about. So it originally, the Chinese believe in their culture that, your ancestors are a very important part of your life, and you are highly influenced, and your life's destiny is influenced by your ancestors. And you, in return, influence your children and your grandchildren, and that's just the cycle of life. And so, because, they believe that where you put your ancestors' bones was had an effect on your descendants, so yourself. So for example, my grandparents' grave and where my grandparents' bones would, if they were in a really good place, really good feng shui place, then that means that my father, myself, and my grandchildren and future generations will have a good life. And that's what they believed. And that's kind of how it started. So gravesite, where to put the bones, where do we make the graves? And if they put the graves in a good feng shui place, then they felt that, the next generation were going to be prosperous. So it was very important to find a good place so your ancestors could rest in peace, basically. But I kind of feel that too. About 4 years ago, and my dad's in Pleasant, and there's a little stream going by, and you just want to sit there, enjoy. Really beautiful. And so when I go and visit my father's grave, it's not, of course I miss him a lot, and it's sad in that sense, but then it's such a when you go to feel like there's a connection, and like they're looking after us. So that's why in ancient China, gravesite feng shui began before the house feng shui. Yeah. So there's still people who do gravesite feng shui. Not very common anymore because you kind of have a little section that you pay for. That's kind of like your grave, and your ashes are in there. But it doesn't mean all your ashes are there. Some ashes could be at the temple, and then some ashes you bring home and have your little shrine at home. And you have a picture. In Japanese culture, they do that from the past. And so you don't have those kind of graveyards like you used to in the past. But that's where feng shui originally started. And if we go further beyond that, it started from the book of change, which is the I-Ching and the Tao de Ching. And how did it start? Well, I think it's because in the Tao, it's kind of complicated, but basically you have heaven, and then you have earth, and then man is in between. And so what the Tao teaches and teaches is how to live your life between heaven and earth. Then you will have a good life. And it was the guidance to how to live a good life, how to act, how to treat other people, and what kind of consequences you do if your actions are negative or if your actions are positive. And it was a guidebook. Today, many is a book of divination. It is. It is a book of divination. However, it wasn't meant to be looked at every day. Some people, they think that they need to read their fortune every day, and it gets to be a little bit, in my opinion, obsessive. And instead of it giving you guidance, it starts to control your life. And that's when you have to be a little bit careful. I have a hairdresser who's from Hong Kong. Very nice lady. We get on so well. I haven't been able to see her because of COVID. So I had to find another person who was willing to cut my hair. But anyway, that's another story. And she was saying she had a friend who was really into reading her fortune every day, very heavily into horoscope. And she said it got to a point where it would control her life. So she would call her and she'd say, "Hey, let's go to lunch." And then she would say, "Well, wait, let me check." So she would open her book and she'd read her horoscope. And if her horoscope said, maybe, today's not a good day, so be careful of something, then she'll say, she goes, "Oh, you know what? Today's not a good day for me. So I don't think we can go to lunch today." And make, she would adapt her life according to the horoscope. So I think when that starts to happen, you have to be a little bit careful, because then you're not in control of your own life. And our decisions, our actions, and our choices is what controls our life, right? And we shouldn't let a book like that, because who knows who wrote it and who knows how they got the information. So we have to be careful to use it as a guidance, but not as the last word. So the I-Ching was a book to guide us, and it was written by several people. One was King Wen, who was a very, very wise king with a very sincere heart. And he looked to nature, he looked to his people, and he wrote these things to help him guide his country or territory and his people, and what he learned from governing. So using those things, he wrote this book on morals and principles and why certain things happen. If you act a certain way, then this will happen. And if you act another way, this will happen. So that the I Ching was a kind of book for guidance and teaching you morals and, what to do. And it's kind of like the Bible or the Quran or, things like that. We need guidance because we're confused people. Humans are all confused. I'm confused too. So it's good to have those kind of books to give you guidance. So how does feng shui fit into all that? Well, feng shui is how your environment affects you. Of course, your actions affect you, the people around you affect you, and the people are also your environment, but also the physical things. And so it began as nature. So the trees, the mountains, the water, the hills, all those things affected the people. And because China has such a long history, they recorded it and how those things affected the people. And that was the beginning of feng shui. They noticed, oh, maybe this hill, if the hill is in this part, it makes me feel better. When the water is here, that's good for, the village. If it's close by, we can go fishing, or we don't have to worry or walk far to get our water. That's the beginning of feng shui. How the environment affected the people, affected the village, affected the country. And the more they learn, the more they understood the energies of the land. So basically, we're just animals. You know, you know how animals are instinctive. They can use their senses to find water. They can use their senses to guide them. The birds know where south is, and they know when they have to go. Probably we had better senses before, but I think we've become kind of numb. We have too much probably technology, comforts in our life today that our natural instincts have become weak. And feng shui is a way to awaken them again. So if you're aware of how your environment affects you, then you can arrange it in a way that makes you feel better. And that's just the basis of feng shui. So why do we put a bed or desk in a certain position? Because it, for example, a desk, if we put it in a specific position, it should increase productivity, concentration, things like that. Um, and we explain why. So the main question is you got to ask why. Why, if we put a desk with a wall behind us, like I'm sitting, there's a wall behind me here, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I can see my door. Why is this position better than if I was facing the wall with the door behind me? Well, because instinctively we're animals, right? So I feel better when can see outside the window and I can see who's coming in the door, and there's a wall behind me and I know nobody can come in behind me. I can concentrate better because I'm not worried subconsciously that somebody's going to come from behind. So I can focus on my work. And when you can focus on your work, what happens? More productivity. And that's what feng shui is about. To bring you to the point where you're very, very productive. And not only in your work, but how to bring people together. Let's say you're having communication problems with, your children. How do you increase activity with your children? You have to create an environment that automatically does that. So that means maybe, you make sure you have dinner at the dinner table and you sit around and you're forced to communicate. That's really important. I got to tell you a story. I did a feng shui for a single man, and he lived in an apartment. Well, he was divorced, put it that way. That's why he was single. And he had a son, and he hadn't been spending a lot of time with his son because he had been divorced for quite a long time. And he wanted to get to know his son again because there was a gap of several years. And I think he had a lot of guilt because he didn't see his children for a while. And he wanted to reconnect with his family. And I think that's wonderful. He wanted to know his own son again. And that's really great. So we went over to his house to see how we could make it more comfortable for his son to come and visit. And then I noticed he had no dining table. He had an island. And the kind of island where you can sit on one side and then it's kind of like the kitchen in the back. So it's kind of like a bar in a sense. And I said, well, you need a little table. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Well, why do I need a table? I just eat here at the counter. I said, well, if you have your son over, how are you going to eat? And you're going to eat side by side? Mm-hmm. You're going to eat side by side. So think about it. You can talk to somebody like this when they're on your side. Yeah, it's not impossible. But it's different if, like me, talking to you directly. It's like me talking to you like this. It's kind of weird, right? Sideways. And you can talk, and then you eat, and then you talk, but it's not. Your energy is going forward, and your head is turn, but your body is going this way. So there's a kind of a contradiction, huh? So actually, when your body and their body were facing each other, better connection. It can be in an L shape, so on the one side of the table or directly across each other. Then you're forced to talk. You can't really ignore the person. And if your goal is to get to know the other person, hey, you need a table, right? You need a table. If you want to create that communication, so you got to know the outcome you want. You got to know. If the outcome is you want to get to know the person, then get a table where you can sit across each other or close to each other, where you can have a good conversation, and you put away your phone, you turn it off, and you communicate. And sometimes you don't really have to say much. I remember when I first met Dr. Zhu, and I said, "Oh, Dr. Zhu, I want to learn this and I want to learn that and I want to learn everything from you." And I was so excited. And he says, "Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just, when you're together, you kind of learn." I said, "What? I didn't really understand that." But it's kind of like osmosis. When you're with that person for a long time, you get their energy and you understand their energy and you learn through osmosis. So if you spend a lot of time with somebody in the same room, there's an energy connection, even if you're not talking. It's kind of a vibration issue. I think we all have vibrations. I have vibration, you have vibration, and you connect with people who have similar vibration. And that's probably how you find your partner. If there's something and you say, "I don't know what it is," but there's a connection. You're vibrating at a similar level. So really intense people really like intense people. They're on the same vibe. That's why we talk about being on the same vibe. When you're on the same vibe, you kind of have that automatic connection. Automatic. You think alike, or you have the same passion for this. And so for my feng shui friends, I get so excited when I get to talk about that. We get excited when we talk about energy and when we talk about, feng shui, and it's just exciting because we have the same interests. So when you're with your child, maybe you don't have to talk so much, but just being together is important. You're sharing that energy. And I don't know if it's the same if it's through the screen, but I believe it is. When you watch a movie, you get swallowed into the place and the characters, and you kind of have that energy, right? So even though there is a physical, when we're not next to each other, sometimes you can still feel the energy. It doesn't mean that, of course, the energy is much, much stronger when you're in person. That's no doubt. No doubt. But on a screen, it still can affect you. And that's why in the future, when we have virtual reality and you can get into the zone and you can, like now we're stuck here, wherever you are. And let's say you want to go on vacation and you want to go to, I don't know, Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. And then you can just put on some goggles and then you can push a button and you can be in Alaska. I mean, how amazing is that? And your mind believes you're in Alaska, even if you're not. So is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. But it affected your mind completely. You think you've gone. Yeah, you can't physically touch it, but you're experiencing it. So in a funny way, we have the physical and we have the mental, we have thoughts and we have our emotions. So if we're in this virtual reality world, it affects what we see, even though we can't touch it. It's affecting what we see. It affects how we feel. Oh, you feel cold even if you're not in there and it's not really snowing in your room. Yeah, and it affects your mind. And chi is that whole thing together. Body, mind, and emotions all connected. Body, mind, spirit all together is your chi. So your chi is definitely affected even though you're not there physically. So like I'm talking to my screen right now, but I believe I'm talking to everybody out there. And I feel a connection to those who like feng shui. And I believe that those who are watching my video like feng shui too. So I feel that energy connection. And so it makes me happy when I do this. It may seem strange to some people, but I feel an energy connection when I do this. And that's why I do it. And I think the more people who understand that, the better. If you can control your environment to make you be the best you, how great is that? So feng shui really began as a way, it wasn't about the environment, it was about how to live your life between heaven and earth. And that was from the I-Ching, and that was from the Tao. And what they found was if they followed nature, that they could live in harmony with nature. Living in harmony with nature was they followed the sun. They woke up when the sun rose and they went to sleep when the sun set. And then they saw the moon coming and going, you know? And then they watched the seasons. And then they figured out, oh, when we plant this time, and then they harvest this time, you know? And they, through observation and just through real living, they figured it out. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what works best for us in our own environment. So your job is to figure out what works best for you in your own home. And every country is different. Every climate is different. Every home is different. Every person is different. So how do we have that something in common? Well, energy is the same. And how we think is the same, and our emotions are the same, right? And how food affects us is the same. Well, I'll take that back because, you know, Asians, what we eat and what my husband is from England, and sometimes what he eats, it doesn't match me, but it matches him. So, and now I know that everybody's different. Some people are lactose intolerant. Some people can eat cheese all day long and then no problem. So you got to know your own body, right? In the same way, you got to know your own self to know what kind of home is good for you. Are you good in the cold? Or do you like hot? You know, such fundamental questions. You know, what colors make you feel good? What colors don't you like? You know, those kind of things. And it's very personal. There's no right or wrong answer. There isn't. It's up to you to decide. So, you know, a lot of people, I'm in a lot of forums in Facebook about do-it-yourself groups and, you know, Marie Kondo groups. I like to look at those kind of things. And a lot of people ask for advice, which is fine. But at the end of the day, you can get a lot of people's advice, and then you take that advice and you sift it through yourself and you make your own decision, regardless of what other people think. You know, what makes you happy is the most important thing, because you are the one who's going to live with it. But the kind of advice you should take is this easier to maintain? Does this color work with this color? You know, maintenance, budget, material, you know, those are kind of questions that are very valid. If you've never used it before, ask questions. And in feng shui, if you read something and you don't know if it's true or not, ask. And that's what my teacher taught me. He says, if it doesn't make sense to you, ask. And you can ask me, you can ask everybody in the forum, and everybody can give their opinion. And in the end, you make your final decision. And if it rings true to you, that's great. Because at the end of the day, you are going to live in that space. A lot of times, if you ask why and you get a proper answer why, and then it rings true, then it'll definitely work for you. So those are the kind of things you think about. So if you need guidance, and you know, if you don't have a religion, you know, there's still the Bible and there's still the Quran, and there's, you know, all kinds of religions, and everybody has their guidance, and they're all wonderful. But for me, now I read the I-Ching and the Tao because that works for me. And I find their wisdom, it makes a lot of sense to me. So you got to find what resonates with yourself and use that as your guidance. That's it for today. So we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening. Good night. Thanks for watching. Oh, one more thing. My book. Yes, my book. I'm still on Indiegogo. And if you'd like to learn more about form, school, feng shui, and if you like what you watched today, please go and get my book called How to Find a Good Feng Shui House. And thank you very much for watching. And thank you very much for your contribution. If you go and get my book, it's on Indiegogo. Okay, thanks everybody. Good night.